Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the show. This is Sports with Strawberry Ice. I'm your host, the Iceman, Jeff Trunipole. And as always, I'm bringing you sports from a West Side point of view right here in the great city of Cincinnati, Ohio, home of the original baseball team, the Cincinnati Reds. Now, do me a favor, if you found the show, hit that like and subscribe button, smash that thumbs up. You guys are killing it. I'm up to 1,706 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Now, if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter and you have yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so. Please go to Sports with Strawberry Ice, hit the subscription button, hit the bell for notification, and every time I go live, you'll be notified. Also, exclusively in the YouTube chat crew, we're doing super chats. So if you want to make sure you get a question out to my special guest today, Bronson Arroyo, give me a super chat. I would greatly appreciate it. And as always, I'm coming to you live from the Ice Cave. And the Ice Cave is brought to you by T Properties. T Properties, quality housing for quality people. Check out the website at www.tpropertiesllc.com for all your rental property management needs and your rental needs. All right, so I got a great guest today. He's one of my favorite Reds ever. He's a rocker. He's a pitcher. He's a world champion. He's awesome. He's Bronson Arroyo. Bronson, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Can't complain.
I also brought in my buddy Dale from
I thought that was my introduction.
I had to bring you in from the bullpen to help me out here because it's such a big interview. So you're welcome, by the way. So Bronson, how's I'd say how things are going. I know you just had a funeral. Your father-in-law passed away. So again, my condolences. I really appreciate you doing this. So my prayers go out to your family and everything.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. Otherwise, everything's good in the world. Just watching some Reds games and having a good time most of the time. If those boys are starting to hit a little bit,
dude, they scored 20 runs yesterday. I was like, what the hell was that? Where'd that come from?
I was pumped for them, because honestly, I said before the season started, people are always asking about your opinion. And I looked at the lineup, even with Suarez and Winker out, and I thought that this lineup could be scrappy. As long as the pitching could hold it down, I thought they could be scrappy. And then they start the season going like basically 0 for the first 14 games with no hits. And I'm like, but it's starting to come around a little bit now.
Yeah, it started to come around. I was a little, well, I mean, when we went to Atlanta, we won 2 out of 3. I'm like, ooh, we might not be that bad. Then they went, shoop. But like you said, it's starting to come around now. But let's get into your life and career. And you started out in Pittsburgh, and then you eventually went to Boston and won the World Series there. What was, out of your stops, excluding Cincinnati, what were your favorite stops? I mean, Pittsburgh or Boston? I think I know the answer, but I'll let you go ahead and answer it.
Oh, as far as places that I played that I really loved, I always loved. I mean, obviously Fenway Park was amazing. Playing in Wrigley Field, the two places that were just, the old places that you could stand on home plate and say, man, Babe Ruth stood here like in Yankee Stadium, right? I mean, it's hard to compare that with anything nowadays. But other cities that I really loved, I mean, Pittsburgh's field is amazing. The way it looks out over the field, city. I always loved Seattle. Every time I was there, you talked about it raining so much, but usually it was great weather for me. You could see the mountains coming down to the water. I always thought it was a beautiful city. Everything was so clean. And then other places that you loved to play was where you had success. And that was, I pitched great inside of Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. I love pitching at Dodger Stadium. There was something about that mound. The dirt was a little bit different than a lot of places around the league. It had like more of kind of a rubber feel to the dirt instead of it kind of like breaking apart and flaking. It was almost like you took dirt and they mixed a little bit of kind of rubber inside of it. It was strange. It was really nice to pitch on. But for the most part, I mean, there was rarely any places that I didn't enjoy pitching. I mean, if I had to say a place that I didn't really love going into was probably St. Louis, only because when you went in there, it was really hard to shut the door on those guys. You find yourself in the 7th inning every time with Albert Pujols up and bases loaded, and somehow they tied the game and you're out, and next thing you know, you lost.
I can't. I call them the Tweety Birds. I can't stand them. I respect them, but I can't stand like Yadier Molina. I can't stand him. I respect the hell out of him, but I cannot stand them. I want to beat them so bad when you guys go play them. And it's for some reason it just seemed like they've gotten the better of us all the way up until 2010. That's when things started to turn around for you guys.
Yeah, a little bit. It took a while when I got traded here from the Red Sox to the Reds in 2006. I didn't know much about the team, and I didn't realize that we didn't have much pitching here, but we had a good offense. Mm-hmm. And so it took a little bit of time to get that whole younger crew that I didn't know at all in the minor leagues, which was the Joey Votto, Jay Bruce kind of era. All those guys came up to the major leagues, and it takes 2 or 3 seasons for guys really to get seasoned enough to really contribute, which is kind of what you're seeing going on with the team this year. You have so many young guys that in order to get everybody working on the same page. You need people to be seasoned enough to contribute and feel comfortable at this level. And it takes a while to get comfortable at the big league level. And so in those first couple of seasons, we just couldn't get it done. But then by 2010, you saw the infusion of some of the young talent getting seasoned, and we got over the hump and made the playoffs, 3 out of those last 4 years.
Exactly. Dale, I'll let you talk now.
No, I was just since we're kind of early on here, I'll ask, did you play any sports growing up? Did you have any other loves outside of baseball, hobbies, anything like that?
Yeah, as a kid, I played a little bit of everything. I think I definitely played basketball all the way through high school, graduated, I probably put up around 1,000 or 1,100 points in 3 seasons.
Got a baller.
Yeah, I probably could have played college basketball, probably not at a Division I right out of the gate, but probably a smaller school. I could jump out the gym, and I was a pretty good player, but I was very, very raw and it was something that I just did for fun. My father never really showed me anything basketball-wise. I didn't go out in the backyard and take 1,000 jumpers a week. It was just something that I did in my spare time. On the baseball side of it was where we were real serious about the craft.
Right.
I played football one year, I think when I was 12. Loved that, and we had a good time, but realized as you're getting older, there was a good chance to probably get hurt, and wasn't really looking to do that because I was definitely thinking about playing in the big leagues from the time I was 5 and 6 years old.
Right.
In a way that it wasn't just a fantasy. I was in the weight room. I was squatting, benching, deadlifting, really heavy weight as a kid. And, kind of taking vitamins and supplements and carbo loading and doing all these things that we do as a professional athlete. I got to do that as a kid, which was very kind of an unusual upbringing. But, other than that, I didn't have a ton of hobbies. After playing sports and doing your school, you really didn't have a lot of time. I loved climbing trees with my friends as a kid. I thought I was a ninja. We had 800 acres behind my parents' house that my buddy grandfather owned, and so we had a couple of go-karts and like a 3-wheeler or something, and we used to cruise all summer out there and climb trees and fish and do a bunch of things that kids do when they're 10, 11, and 12 years old.
Right. That sounds like a lot of fun. Now, Dale was telling me here before we started, and I didn't realize this, but your father was a power lifter. Is that true?
Yeah, him and his friends down in the Keys. So I actually grew up in Key West, Florida. We moved to where I wind up being in a little town called Brooksville, north of Tampa, when I was 10. But in the 70s, he was a construction worker, and all of his friends were into lifting weights. So they were all squat, benching, and deadlift. These guys were benching somewhere between 400 and 500 pounds. They were all squatting and deadlifting like in the mid 600s. And so they were real serious about that. And that's where the thing with the weight room came with me. So He saw me play T-ball. We had never played catch as kids. And so he asked me if I wanted to play a sport. I said, sure, I'd love to play T-ball. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, because he played basketball and football in high school with no baseball.
Right.
And so after he saw me throw a ball across the infield like a 12-year-old, and I never played catch, and I was 5, he thought
he had that arm.
Yeah, he thought I'll put him in the weight room, and I think I can get him a free education in college. I remember very distinctly that was his goal. And as we started upon this journey, you're just getting stronger. And back then, this is the mid 80s,
right?
And people are constantly telling your father that, you're going to stunt this growth. You're crazy.
Yep. That's what they said about. Yep, I remember that too. They said that to me too. Which I never worked out, but but they would say that too. Don't work out too soon.
yeah, they would always say that, and it was like the only people who were lifting the way I was lifting was like Russian athletes, back in those days, Olympians, and
right.
I'm 8 years old. I've got a DVD of me, and if I don't have this DVD, probably nobody believes this stuff. But I'm 8 years old. I weigh 55 pounds, and we would max out twice a year. And on this DVD in 1985, I max out. I bench 130 pounds. I deadlift 255, and I squat 235. And I'm a little tiny kid, man. I weigh 55 pounds. And when I watch the DVDs now, it's hard to believe, honestly. But it was just something that we did on a regular basis, and it didn't seem extraordinary to me. But it was because we lived that life,
Right.
Yeah. That probably instilled like that work ethic in you at a young age without you even knowing it, because it just was part of your life.
Absolutely. What it really gave me was this mental toughness about the grind, the everyday grind, which I wasn't thinking about baseball being 162 games back then, because, when you're a kid, you just played, 25 games.
Right.
But when I got in the rookie league, I really realized that a lot of guys would get burned out very quickly by August, especially early in their career. And for me, it was just such a year-round thing, because even when I was playing other sports, we were still lifting weights, and we were always preparing for baseball. So if I'm playing basketball, I was still coming home at night sometimes and hitting in the batting cage, with lights on and stuff. So it made my mind understand that baseball would be a year-round process for me, and it really helped me out throughout the minor leagues for sure.
Now I have a question. Now you say the kids are getting burnt out back in '85. Then what do you think about the kids now that they play travel baseball and then they're playing all year round? I mean, I don't see how these kids, especially pitchers, like they're snapping off curveballs at 12, 11 years old. We were always told that's not good for your arm. What's your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, the travel ball is definitely, it's raised the bar. There's no doubt. I mean, if you play against better talent, you're gonna get better. And they're basically taking elite all-star teams and traveling around. In my day, I was really fortunate in the little town that I grew up there. Like I said, we had 5 of us. We had 5 guys play. 3 of them played minor league baseball up to AAA that were all in my little league circle. And then me and AJ Brzezinski both played 15 years in the big leagues. I mean, he was my catcher when I was 13 years old. And so we had this really, unique group that came out of, just regular non-travel ball, just like playing for Dairy Queen, right? Like
right
on Saturdays and Tuesdays or whatever it was. These days with the travel ball, there's something to be said that it obviously is better for playing more games. I mean, these kids get used to that. But the one part that I don't like about it is that it kind of doesn't give you the opportunity to play other sports sometimes. When you're a kid, when you're playing a little bit of soccer and you play a little bit of basketball, you're picking up hand-eye coordination with your feet and different things that can help you in baseball or another sport. And, when you're having to play baseball all the time, I think it can be a little bit of a grind. It's nice to have a little bit of a breather and a break. Would I have wanted to play 80 baseball games as a kid? Probably, because when you're a kid, you feel like you can just do that. But, is it nice to have some breaks and some time in between and maybe have some time in the summer where you're not playing or in the fall? It would be nice. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But as far as the curveball, I think this is what I always say. We talk about stress on the arm, and I personally think that the breaking ball is a curveball is one of the most unique things to try to command.
Right.
You see all the time. There's guys at the big league level who still can't throw strikes with their breaking stuff. And so I encourage kids at a younger age to not take it into the game with hard velocity, but I want you to play catch with it on flat ground early in your life. And the reason is you're going to start understanding that the ball is going to be spinning out of your hand forward, because every other pitch spins backwards, right? So a fastball comes out backwards, so a changeup comes out backwards. If we're throwing a curveball, it's going out forward, and it's a very unique thing to get your brain to understand where the release point is to throw a strike. And so I like kids to play flat ground, even when they're 10, just spin it a little bit. But you're always telling them, like, maybe you're not going to throw it in the game until you're 14 or 15, but you have to have an idea of how to throw it before you take it into the game. And so I like to get kids throwing them early, but not throwing them at max effort.
Yeah, the cool thing about when you would pitch, and I got to put this. I'm gonna try to put this picture up, and I always love I call it your iconic leg kick. I think this, because not everybody does the straight out leg. Everybody does a bent knee, but it's also that. It's also, like you just said, you would say you throw frisbees up there, because I mean you throw it from here, you throw it from up here. Especially the older you got, the more you did more arm angles. How did you come up with the leg kick and just morphing yourself into the different arm angles as you got older?
Right. So all of that, I mean, the arm angles obviously is a testament to having command as a kid. What we find is if you can throw strikes at high school, you'll throw strikes at the big league level. And if you walk guys in high school, you'll walk guys at the big league level. There's something very innate that I think is built into the machine very early on about hand-eye coordination and about feel. And it's also why you get a guy like John Stockton who can shoot free throws, and a guy like Shaquille O'Neal who could practice just as long, they can never shoot a free throw the same, right? Because there's something there that you just can't get over the hump after you're 30-something years old, And so as a kid, I experimented a lot. My father was a guy who loved strategy. And he was always thinking about, because even if you go back to those weight room days, right, it would take us 6 months to try to squat 5 more pounds than you did, 6 months earlier, right? We're working in these tiny, tiny little grooves of like, how do we get 5 pounds out of our body? And so you're always talking about detail. And inside of that detail comes some strategy. And so in that strategy, my father loved for me to like drop down and throw sidearm as a kid. And you were trying things at shortstop. How do you turn a double play better, right? And so all these things morph into the ability of me to do things on the mound that other guys maybe couldn't do, and changing arm angles and throwing a 68-mile-an-hour curveball and then an 80-mile-an-hour curveball, right? And a lot of that was just trial and error as a kid and really kind of getting used to it. And I also think that, I don't have long arms by nature or long, big hands. I didn't throw really hard, so for me, I felt like it was almost like swinging a golf club that was a little shorter. You control it a little bit better, but you were never going to throw 100 miles an hour, right? So we're all kind of working with inside some sort of limits of what you have as a person physically. And I was just a guy that was kind of tailored to not be overpowering, but had a bit of command. And, the leg kick was bore out of watching Dwight Gooden in 1985.
Yes, Doc. Oh, dude, love watching him pitch. He could have been, should have been one of the greatest pitchers ever, but that's a whole other story with him.
Listen, he won like 40 or 50 games more than me, and he was doing cocaine half the time.
Exactly. Yes. Just think what he would have done if he hadn't done that. Jeez.
I honestly think he's like a 275 to 300 game winner easily.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his rookie year in '86 was freaking, or no, '84, wasn't it? '84.
84, 85, yeah.
Was ridiculous. I mean, he was like, 19? Something like that? I mean, it was unbelievable.
The year before that, he was in Lynchburg in High A, where I played in 1997. He punched out 300 in the minor leagues that year.
Jeez, that's just ridiculous, man. That is absolutely ridiculous. Now, one thing about you pitching is I always thought that you were a thinking man's pitcher, because like you said, you didn't have the high velocity. And sometimes, dude, honestly, it looked like you just make stuff up on the fly and try to throw some up there, and it would work. I don't think you'd actually make it up on the fly, but how much does the mental aspect of the game come into your game?
Yeah, what allowed me to do what I was doing out there, which could look very free and easy sometimes. There was times I remember I woke up in Atlanta. I was taking a nap, and Chris Welsh, he woke me up, and he said, "Hey, you're always dropping down and throwing a fastball and a curveball." He goes, "When are you going to throw me a drop down changeup?"
Ooh.
And he'll tell you this story. I went out there and I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. I tried it in the bullpen. I said, I threw a drop down changeup. We laughed because me and David Ross, I don't think we gave up a hit for like a month and a half on the drop down changeup. We weren't throwing it all the time, but it was absolutely hilarious. And then I said, there you go, Welchie. There it is. We got like 3 outs that day with it. And then we used it for like the rest of that season. I don't know if I ever used it the next year, but what allowed me to do that, part of it was the fact that I was so comfortable in my own skin, right? It's like in life, in a lot of ways, we always try to, people are looking in the mirror all the time, wishing they had somebody else's ears or their nose, right? And there's things you can't do anything about. And as athletes, people tend to do that. They tend to think, man, I'd be so much better if I could just throw a little harder, right? And you just can't get that out of your body all the time. So part of pitching the way I did is having the strategy to pick people apart, but also just understanding that you only have what you have. So I'm going to have to beat you with 88 to 90. I'm going to have to beat you with a 68 to 75 mile an hour breaking ball. I didn't have Max Scherzer stuff or Clayton Kershaw's cutter or whatever it was. And so because I was so comfortable in my own skin, I could go out on the mound and kind of push the adrenaline down and say, you know what? We're going to let it fly here. Let's just see what happens. I pitched very free and easy. And part of it, if you watch me on a day-to-day basis, I would say what is kind of a testament to that is the way that I would warm up before a game.
Okay.
If you watched my bullpen before a game, it would be the easiest game of toss you've ever seen in your life. Like I was throwing like 78 miles an hour in the bullpen. I remember my first start in Arizona. I warmed up, and Jay Putz was our closer. He had never seen me really pitch before. And when I was walking off the mound, he said, "That you're done?" I said, he said, "I cannot believe you're going out on the mound after doing what you just did." I mean, because the whole time in my mind, it was about, I want to get loose enough to not get hurt.
Right.
But I'm conserving all energy, and I do not need to see my best stuff. Because whether you have your best stuff when you're warming up in the bullpen or not, it's not going to come between, in the next 8 minutes before I hit the field, right? You only kind of have what you have. So instead of being down there and being like, I need to see my nastiest breaking ball to affirm that it's there, I was just throwing nice and easy. And I go, when we get out on the mound, we're going to go to war and let's just see what happens, right? But a lot of guys can't do that. They need to affirm to themselves that they have their nastiest stuff. And by the time they get done with that, they've burned 45 pitches of nasty stuff in the bullpen, and then you can't get deep in the ball game. And so part of who I was to be able to do all that stuff was just the fact that I was confident enough in myself to not stress myself out, push the adrenaline down, and kind of be calm.
Right. Exactly. All right, Dale, your turn. I keep talking. I'll let you. I brought you on here to ask you questions. I keep talking. Go ahead.
It's your show, man. I was just going to say, Bronson, have you ever thought about getting into coaching, or you kind of like the freedom of all the things you've been able to do since you've been retired?
Yeah, the freedom has been really, really beautiful, because, for the average athlete, I would think you probably don't get real serious about your craft until about 16, 17, 18 at the earliest, right? A lot of times not till college. guys don't hit the weight room till after college and start thinking about calories and resting and stuff. And because, like I said, I've been doing that since I was 5 years old. I retired at 40. It was 35 years of me thinking about this game, in a real professional way. And so I always said, when guys were retiring, when I thought they still had some juice left in the tank, I used to say, you guys go ahead and do that, but I'm going to play until they rip the shirt off my back or my body won't go anymore.
Right.
And then I feel like I'll at least be satiated. I will have had my fill of the game. And, if I could rip myself into more than one of myself, there's no doubt that I would love to be a pitching coach in the major leagues. I would love to be a radio broadcaster. There's so many cool things to do out there, but because I'm only can be, just one person, I kind of pop in, I'll do one thing for a day, and I'll do this podcast tomorrow, and I'll play a little music today, and then I'll trap. I'm doing a bunch of one-off things, and I didn't want to really be tied to a paycheck because, honestly, to be a good broadcaster or a good pitching coach or a manager in Major League Baseball probably takes more time than being a player.
Right.
And I just wasn't looking forward to giving that commitment.
Yeah, and you've done some broadcasting for the Reds. I don't think you've done any this year. I know you did some last year. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think you did a really good job at it, to be honest.
I love it because it gives me the opportunity to kind of explain how I thought outside of the box and how I thought about the game in a different way than most guys. But like I said, it's a little time consuming, and unless you agree to do like 40 games, they usually just call me once in a blue moon. They asked me to do Toronto a couple of days ago, which Sam LeCure wound up taking that because I couldn't go do it. But once in a while, I don't mind doing stuff. But if I want to go see Pearl Jam in Brazil, or if I want to just play golf for 7 days in a row, sometimes it's just nice to be off the grid.
Yeah, exactly. Or go watch Kiss. I know you got to go see Kiss a couple weeks ago with her buddy Tim. How was that? Because hopefully I'm going to get a chance to go do this. But how was watching Kiss live and getting backstage? Because I know you've seen Pearl Jam. I know that, but how's Kiss different than Pearl Jam?
Well, it's such a legendary vibe for one visually. It's like, they definitely give you what you want visually. I wasn't a guy who was huge into Kiss music as a kid. Right. So I'm kind of like a late bloomer, kind of catching up on the backside. So it doesn't hit me quite as personal as some stuff like Stone Temple Pilots or Nirvana.
Yes.
But the visual was everything you'd want and more. I mean, these guys have done just to come up with the idea that you could, put something on your face so that way when you're 70, you can still be rocking and no one can really tell how old you are. I mean, absolutely genius. But I had taken my buddy Jamie Combs with me, who was a guitar player in my band here around Cincinnati, and he's a diehard. And he was so nervous when Gene Simmons and the guys came out. Like I said, Jamie, are you okay, man? He's like, no, dude. I said, what's wrong? He said, this is like you meeting John Lennon, bro. You don't understand. And so it was a really cool night.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now I've been dying to get into it, and we talked about Kiss, and I'm the same way. I'm a late comer to Kiss. I grew up in the 90s, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, STP, all those guys. Those are the bands that I really got into. Now, you had developed a friendship with Eddie Vedder. How did that come to be?
That was it was kind of a slow process, actually. Eddie's a guy who's he's operating on a level that most of us don't live, right? He's like up in that Bruce Springsteen atmosphere. It's almost, it's a notch above the average musician. It's kind of like a musician mixed with a A-list actor, right? It's like, these types of guys can call up the president of the United States sometimes and have a conversation, right? And so when you're working in that upper echelon, the same way it would be in baseball if you were maybe Derek Jeter, right?
Right.
It's kind of a whole notch above where I live. And so it took a while really to get to know Eddie. But it started in 2010. I went to a Pearl Jam show for the first time because those guys were always touring in the summer like everyone else, and we were playing ball every day.
Right.
It happened to have an off day, and I got up to Columbus and saw the show. And my buddy Mike Mushak, the guitar player from Stained.
Yeah. Okay.
I had called Mike, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be up there. If you know anybody in that camp, man, maybe give him a shout." And he did. He through the radio. I think it was through their label or something. He basically. They had some tickets for me. I had already bought tickets, but there were some backstage passes. There was no one there really. And so it was me and my buddy, Brian Harris, who worked in the clubhouse for the Reds. We got to hang with Eddie and the guys in the band for a few hours before the show and about an hour after the show. And then it was just this gradual process of going to shows and then seeing Eddie and then getting his cell phone number and then, playing a little music together and him respecting what you do out on the mound and kind of sharing things back and forth because he's such a big Cubs fan. So, I had my way with the Cubs a lot in my
yes, you did.
And so he'd call me all the time and say, Bronson, he'd say like, I watched the game today, man. He goes, I was rooting for you and I was rooting for the Cubs. And he goes, man, you really put it on them, and we talk about the game. It was beautiful. And, so over the years, we've become friends. We've got to hang in a lot of different places now. And, it's something that's been so beautiful because when you meet a childhood hero like that, it's my favorite record of all time since I was a 15-year-old kid. A lot of times I would think maybe the guy wouldn't live up to the hype.
Right.
But Eddie, for sure, man. I mean, just his authenticity, the way he listens when he talks to you, the things he remembers, is just absolute magic to be around the guy, really.
There's a couple cool stories that I want to get into with you. The first one, and it's a video. I think I saw it on Reds Live or something. It's a couple years ago where you're at a concert, and I think he called you up on stage, and you played the guitar for, I can't remember which song it was. And Eddie, you if I remember the interview, you were like, Eddie looked at you like, holy shit, okay, you got this. You know how to play it. And you were up there playing with them. How cool was that? And how did that happen?
Yeah, that was the first time I played with him. So I played with him 2 times. Once with the full band in Fenway Park in 2015, in front of 40,000 in a place where I won a World Series. I mean, that was a magic night.
Was that nerve-wracking?
That one was not. The first time was, which we were talking about. The first time was in a small theater, probably in front of 5,000 people in Orlando.
Okay.
And I was sitting in the crowd like any other fan. I didn't even have his number back then. And after he played for about an hour and a half, he did Porch, walked off, and came back for an encore. And he said, I got a buddy in the house, Mr. Bronson Arroyo from the Cincinnati Reds. Why don't you come up to the stage? And I literally just threw me out of my seat like you're in the movie theater as a 12-year-old kid. Like, excuse me. And I walk up to the stage, and the stage is probably up to my neck. And his security guy, Pete, had come around the corner to tell me where the stairs were. So before he could even say anything, I just floated up on the stage, And,
right.
And Eddie just leans over off the mic and he says, you know how to play black? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I'll get you in 2 songs. So I walk up to the side stage, and his guitar tech was there, George Webb. And I said, George, what's he doing, man? I said, first of all, Sean Casey told me to tell you hi if I saw you today. And I said, secondly, I mean, what's going on here? Am I playing the guitar? Is he playing the guitar? What is he doing? He said, I don't know, man. He said, because he doesn't play these songs for anybody by himself. He doesn't really play a live, black, even flow. He doesn't play a lot of those songs that, for one, usually take more than one person to kind of make happen.
Right.
But also stuff that I think that he didn't write the music to, that he only wrote the lyrics to, he doesn't do when he plays solo a lot. So he'd only played black one other time by himself on an organ because somebody had given him like a donation on the spot.
Okay.
So songs goes by, he calls me out. He tells this story about reading that I played black in a bar across the street in 2012 after we lost Game 3 to the Giants.
Okay.
I was over at the Holy Grail, had a band in there. Win, lose, or draw, I was going to go over and play. I think I played like 8 songs, and one of them was black. Eddie read that, and he said, I didn't hear it and I didn't see it, but I just assumed you'd come up and play it tonight. And then he says, go ahead, you're up, brother. And I start playing his acoustic guitar. And as I'm playing the intro, as I watch the video back later on, I got the video, you can see in his face, he's looking at me like, is he going to be able to pull this off?
Yeah,
and we're good. And then he goes and sings, man, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that was so cool because I remember I see that video, and I'm like, because like you said, you can see Eddie there going, all right, can he really do this? And he's like, all right, cool, he's got it. And then you go into it. Now, the other cool thing I heard, and I can't remember what the video is, but there's a pen in one of the Pearl Jam's videos that Eddie actually uses to write songs, and I think he ended up actually giving you that pen, right?
Yeah, he gave me that pen. It was actually that night after I played that song, he handed me an envelope. And I had forgotten about it until the end of the night. And as I opened it up back in the hotel room later on, and it had this just beautiful note. I mean, just his handwriting alone is like a work of art. I mean, but he's really worked at it, like he works on his calligraphy. He really he's an artsy guy,
Yeah.
And he had written in there something like, Bronson, last time we were together, we were talking about lucky typewriters and writing lyrics and things. And he said, I meant to give you this that night, but now I'm afforded another opportunity. He said, I got this fairly ordinary writing utensil in a hotel in Santa Monica many years ago, and I know it's got some good juju and some songs left in it. I want to leave this one to you. And he gave me that pen, and I just finished. I'm in the midst of mastering right now my first original record that I've ever written, and it's almost finished. It's getting mastered in London right now, and I wrote the lyrics to almost all those songs with that pen, and so it was a pretty good process. Yeah.
So you got a gig here, real close to my house here at the Pirates Den, Saturday, August 6th. Will you be playing some of these original songs there too, as well?
So this band is my Cincinnati band. We mostly play all covers. We do mix in one or two of these originals that I had written over the last couple of years. But I recorded them with a different band. It was a bunch of guys that I met when I played in New England.
Okay.
They were all Red Sox fans. And we used to do this charity event for Theo Epstein called the Hot Stove Cool Music every year.
Okay.
And those groups of guys, they all play in bigger bands. They don't have real jobs, right? So the guys in Cincinnati, they all have like regular day jobs, except for my buddy Jamie Combs, who plays music for a living. But around here, it's kind of like we just get together about 12 to 15 times a year. We have a really good time. We play a bunch of cover songs, and it's a really good band. But out there, I always said I was going to write an original album with these guys.
Right.
So we got to pull that off over the last couple of years through COVID. And it's been a fun process because I'm going to try to figure out how to push that stuff to the world for the first time. I've never really had to run that road before, about how to get original music out and see if you can play some shows. So it's going to be, I'm actually going to take those songs. I played the demos for Eddie in Pearl Jam's warehouse up in Seattle in 2018 before I recorded them. I just wanted to hear the really raw demos.
Right.
And just tell me what he thought about it. And so he listened to the stuff. He gave me some notes. He said, man, you got some good songs here, man. Just go record them. And so we did. And I'm going to now send them to him and say, hey, I need some advice about how I'm going to push this thing to the world and how I'm going to play some shows over the next couple of years. And we'll see what happens.
Dude, that sounds awesome. Hey, whenever you're doing it, let me know, because I'm like, I'll push it out on my little YouTube channel and help you out as much as I can. All right, Dan, actually, let's get a couple questions here from the chat here. I don't want to keep ignoring people here. Let's see, Jeff Holmes, and he's a Cardinals fan, but he's a Bengals fan. So we got to go with him. He goes, who was the one batter that was your toughest out, and what team did you have real hate for?
Well, the second part of the question, I mean, I never really had any real hate for anybody in the game, to be honest with you. I always saw it as, like when I played in that Red Sox-Yankees rivalry, they tried to make you feel like you actually hated those guys, but it was more about the fan base, hating the other team more than it was the real players. And as baseball becomes musical chairs where guys change teams more and more often, it's really hard to have hate for other teams. I mean, I think if it was the 1950s and I played on the Dodgers for my whole career, you probably have some disdain for the Giants, I'm sure. But it's in this day and age, I've always been an easygoing guy, so I really didn't have any disdain for any team like that. But toughest out, hands down, Barry Bonds and Albert Pujols were the two guys that were just almost impossible to get out, to be honest with you. I mean, they just you just prayed that they hit the ball hard at somebody because you knew they were going to hit it hard, right? It was like they're going to square the ball up. They're not going to swing at stuff off the plate. They're just got so much power. They can hit ground balls through the infield, that other people, wouldn't get a base hit on because their ball went through the grass so fast. And you just tried to stay down. You walked them. You didn't care if you walked them, but just almost impossible to pitch to.
All right, Dale, go ahead. I know Dale has got to have a Bengals and Brews question here for you, because if you don't know his show, people get on his show and they let loose a little bit. They'll drink a couple beers, a couple shots, do a couple different things. So I know he's got to have a Bengals and Brews question for you.
And 4 hours later, you're drunk with Clark Harris and Shane Graham these last couple of weeks, man. It's been great. But so, are you a beer guy? Bourbon, wine? Do you drink it all? And do you have any great party stories from your time in Cincinnati that you're willing to tell that won't incriminate you?
Yeah, willing to tell.
I know. I tell these stories a lot. I was actually in a hotel room in Boston 2 nights ago, telling a bunch of old stories, and I was thinking, I don't know if any of these can be aired. They're all like, every one of them can't be aired. But the first part of the question is, I'm not much of a drinker. I never was. I'd go out to a bar. Usually, I'd have 3 or 4 beers. I was out a lot. I really, I like people. What I really loved about the bar scene, was talking to people in an authentic way, having a conversation with some college kids, whoever it was. You're having this real conversation, and I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm being, and I'm giving you back, honesty, and I'm not blowing you off. I saw so many other players that just blow people off, and I think they realized that once they retired and nobody cared who you were anymore, or much less, that's when the real person would come out, and When I think of people like that, I think of like a Tiger Woods. I think of an Alex Rodriguez. I think of maybe a Randy Johnson, where guys, they were too uptight when they played. And then after they realized, like, what, I probably could have been a little bit more myself and been a little bit more relaxed in interviews and being cool with the fans. So I was always a guy who just tried to be cool from the outset, I'm thinking of Cincinnati stories. I'll tell you a great story. Charlie Sheen is a big Reds fan.
Yes, he is. Yes,
And
he is.
There was all these crazy stories from him throwing these 2-team parties back in 1990 and 91 on the West Coast for that team with Tom Browning and the whole crew, Vanilla. Yeah. And these are legendary stories, man. And so when he started coming around our team a little bit and showing up in Dodger Stadium and stuff, you know, I would always kind of prod him. It was like, come on, bro, let's throw a party like you did back in 1990, bro.
Right, exactly.
You know, so he finally showed up in Cincinnati one day, and I threw him a little party down at, it used to be a place called FB's in town, over by the right downtown, almost by Fountain Square.
Okay.
And it was a little place, and underneath it was like a 70s vibe. It was like old couches, and it had a Miss Pac-Man machine, and it was a small, like, quaint little place. It reminded me of being inside of like a mafia little bar that only a few people would go to. And so I threw this party for Charlie, and he showed up, and you know, we must have been there. I probably put like 30 or 40 girls in the place and a bunch of friends, and just trying to make them feel comfortable. And I never forget, because they were talking about 2.5 Men was when he was going through that whole thing about, you know,
the tiger blood
and all the stuff, the Adonis DNA and all that. And 2.5 Men was suing him, or he was suing them, or whatever it was. And he was starting this other show. Mm-hmm. And Todd Zeal was there, the third baseman.
Oh, yeah.
From the Mets back in the day. And I was like, oh, what's Todd doing here? And he was like, man, Todd's one of our best writers. Like, he writes half our shows.
Really?
Like, whoa, what? I mean, that's an amazing talent that nobody knew about. Yeah. And Charlie always had a buddy with him named Tony Todd. It's a black guy who was his best friend since like second grade. If you ever see Charlie almost all the time, maybe not these days, but for about 20 or 30 years, Tony was always with him. Really clean cut black guy, never had a drink in his life. And Tony calls himself, he says it's Charlie Sheen and Afro Sheen. Those are the two guys. So they were like best buds. I mean, they throw batting practice to each other out in LA, trying to get homers at Dodger Stadium and stuff. And so Tony's there, and we're hanging out, and I'm just having a good time, and I'm kind of staying away from Charlie, letting him do his thing. And all of a sudden, he has a security guard that taps me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Hey, man, I need you back in this room." And I'm like, "What?" There was this little office. I go back in this office, man, and it's just like this tiny little office. There's mannequins all over the floor that they use for something there, like. But, you know, the body.
You might not want to know. You might not want to know.
So the legs and the upper torsos were all detached from each other, and they were just all around, and it was just like an office, you know, a little messy, whatever. And Charlie's back in there, man, and he is messed up, dude. He is just freaking like twitching, man. He is like, "Bronson, what's going on, bro?" He's all over the place. And I'm trying to talk to him, and I'm asking him about being on the set. I'm like, "What time do you get up to go on the set?" And he's like, "I go whenever the hell I want." You know, he's getting crazy, and he's starting to tell me, like, I can see it. It's 1990 all over again, brother. You guys are going to win the thing. This is in 2012, just before the playoffs. And all of a sudden, finally, the security guard, he looks at me, and he's like, "Bronson, listen to me." He's like, "This guy is not going to die on my watch, bro." He goes, "I got to get him out of here." Right. So I'm like, "All right, dude." So I look at Charlie. I swear, I looked at Charlie after we've been talking for like a half hour in there, man. He's just like going out of his mind. Right. I'm like, "Charlie, listen, bro." I said, "We got a day game tomorrow, man." I go, "We got a day game." I go, "We need you. We need you, Charlie." He goes, "All right, man." He finally concedes. Me and the bodyguard, we literally drag him up the stairs, dude, to this back alley. His feet are dragging on the stairs like a dead person. Boom, 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 all the way up to the top. The back door opens, and dude, this black SUV is raining. Black SUV comes screeching out of a movie, dude, like Men in Black, man. Guys with earpieces and stuff. They throw Charlie in the side of the car, dude. He disappears. He was so drunk, it was unbelievable. And then the next day, you see him on the Jumbotron. "Charlie Sheen gives $50,000 to the community fund of the Reds," and he's like, "Hey, guys, that's just a daisy, bro."
Oh God, that's a superpower right there. To be able to do that and wake up the next day and be fine.
Yeah. I tell you what, I've had some funny stories with Charlie, man. I was in Charlie's house another time in LA, man, when Johnny Gomes and Dustin Pedroia called me, and they said they had lost so many games in a row with the Red Sox. It was near the end of the season. They needed the little doll from Major League. Joe. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I know you're talking about. Yeah.
I show up at Charlie's house, and Afro Sheen opens his box and says, "Look what I have, Bronson," and it's freaking Joe Boo, dude. I'm like, whoa, dude. And like you're up in his house, in his bar area. He's got the shark fin from Jaws 1.
Oh God.
You know, he's got all this cool stuff from Platoon. He's got all these movie sets in there. He's got Babe Ruth's hat in the house.
Really?
And little Joe Boo sitting on the top of the bar, man.
That is freaking awesome, dude. That is so cool. I mean, the Babe Ruth hat, that to me, I'm a sports collector geek. I would love that. That would be cool. Just see it.
Absolutely.
I would have tried to get something from him too if I was you, though, Bronson. I'd be like, yeah, I really like that. I need that for good luck.
Yeah.
Like,
Let me get that hat from your father from Apocalypse Now.
Exactly. Now, Crypt Keeper, who's big comments on here, he's keeping asking different questions about Pearl Jam and stuff, and if you know the words to Yellow Ledbetter. I'm pretty sure you do, but do you? And he wants to know if you'd sing it, which I'm not. You don't have a guitar, so
I don't think anybody really knows the true words to Ledbetter. And I think what actually happened there, is the way that Pearl Jam recorded a lot of their records is, in a real organic way. So the guys in the band are jamming on something, and just as a lot of singers would do, you're coming up with lyrics on the fly, kind of over this melody that you're hearing. And I think that might have been one of the real songs that Eddie probably mumbled some words, and some of that stuff might have stuck. You know what I mean? Like he didn't know exactly what he was going to say when he was saying it, and those lyrics actually stuck. I mean, there's definitely a story in that song that I believe has to do with a soldier coming back, in a box or a bag, dead for and his parents being notified by military, someone knocking on the door. I believe that's the story in the song. But as far as like really knowing the lyrics, I mean, the stuff that he sang on the record and what he sings live are two different things. Yeah. And I've heard him do multiple different versions live. So you just really don't know exactly what they're supposed to be.
Exactly.
But makes it even better to me. Like,
well, I always bet the end of the song is I was dying, you was that's about the end of the song. I get I died or something, and that's the end of it.
Right.
It's pretty cool though. Like I said, I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. So let's get to we went through your years with the Reds, and unfortunately, after the long run you had here, the Reds let you go because they were rebuilding, and you went on to Arizona for a couple of years. Actually, only made it there for like a half a year, and you actually got an arm injury, which shocked the crap out of me that you actually got an arm injury because of the way we said on this broadcast here, you don't throw that hard, and you end up getting Tommy John, right?
Yeah, that was so I after I left here in 2013, I really wanted to stick around, and they would have had me back for 1 year probably for a little bit of a discount or something, or I think they wanted me to defer the money again, and I had already deferred the last 3-year contract for 7 years. Right. For no interest, and I felt like I'd already done my part. I was probably the best teammate in that locker room. I mean, I threw every team party. I paid for them. I'd run a radio show on the game. I mean, I had, if anybody needed anti-inflammatories or, anything to help the starting staff, I mean, guys would come to me. It was right. Like, I did a lot. And so I felt like, hey, I gave you guys a hometown discount already once. I deferred the money so you could sign some other players. I really felt like I'd done my job. And so at that time, I felt like, you should give me a solid 2-year deal in order for me to stay. If not, I'm going to have to test the open market for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I wound up signing with the Diamondbacks for 2 years. And I get over there and right away in spring training, my shoulder was bugging me a little bit. And I got a cortisone shot, and I never had one of those before. And I didn't realize how good that could work for a long period of time. Right. I got this cortisone shot in spring, and then I started the season. I got off to a good start. I think I was like, I don't know. I think I was leading the team in wins when I got hurt with like 7 or something. I was already like 7-2 or something. Right. And it was only like in, I don't know, late May or early June or something. And then my elbow started killing me. And every time I would pitch, it would just swell up. And it got to the point where I pitched 8 times though with no ligament in my elbow, and which is just unheard of because most guys can't command the baseball without it. Right. And for whatever reason, I still was commanding the ball and I was still winning. That's the thing. Like I went 3-2 with like a 2-something ERA over that 8-game stretch. And but my velocity kept coming down. And so the last game I pitched for the Diamondbacks, I was in Dodger Stadium. I was warming up in the bullpen, and my elbow, like my elbow already doesn't, it already doesn't straighten out all the way. You know what I mean? From pitching all those years. But back then it was about like here. And that was after taking a lot of drugs to get it down. And so I was starting the game. I could barely even reach home plate in the bullpen. I was bouncing the ball, and I looked at the pitching coach, Mike Harkey, and I said, hey, it's going to be my last one. I can't go again. And he said, okay. So I went out there in Dodger Stadium. I get 3 outs in the first inning. I come in the dugout, and Kirk Gibson, he's my manager, and he goes, Bronson, I got to get you out of the game. I said, for what? He said, you're throwing 75 to 79, man. You ain't even throwing 80 miles an hour yet. I said, listen, you got to leave me in the game, man. This is my last one. Let me roll. I went in 5 innings. I beat Josh Beckett in Dodger Stadium 2-1, man. Broke Hanley Ramirez's bat twice with like 80-mile-an-hour fastballs. And, I went back home to Arizona. They looked at it. They said, your ligamente's gone. You need Tommy John. But at the same time, that cortisone shot was wearing out on my shoulder.
Right.
And nobody really even knew this. I had Tommy John surgery, and I had my shoulder done a few weeks later. And the shoulder surgery went completely under the radar. Like they never acknowledged it in the paper or in the reports. Nobody ever asked me about it because I was having the Tommy John. So they just said, oh, he's got Tommy John. And so I went and had the second surgery. And I knew it was going to be a battle to try to come back. And it took me like 2 years to get back healthy. And I still was never healthy. So I pitched 14 games for the Diamondbacks that year in 14. And then I pitched 14 starts for the Reds in 2017. And that really was the last 28 starts, basically a full season of starts from kind of a broke down body. But it had been 19 and a half seasons before that. I never missed a game.
Right. That's what was so surprising about it, because you're always so healthy and everything. And all of a sudden it just dropped off the cliff. But I mean, I was always happy that you came back and were able to finish out as a Red. Is that something you wanted to finish out as a Red, or they were just the ones to give you the opportunity?
Well, I was only going to have a couple of opportunities there. My old pitching coach from the Diamondbacks, who saw me struggling with all those arm injuries and still winning baseball games, was Todd Stottlemyre. Okay. And he kind of going up to Seattle. And, if you'd been in my personal space in a locker room for a long enough period of time, like a guy like Brian Price, who was my pitching coach for a while and my manager, you got this sense that Bronson can do a little bit of extraordinary things. I mean, he can go out there hurt and banged up, and he still finds ways to win games. And I'm a good teammate, and I make guys better, and I give them a different perspective, and all this stuff added up to a bunch of crumbs that was like this magic cookie. And it was like, man, we'll take that guy on this team any day of the week, right? And so I was going to have a few opportunities to play in the game, even though I was 40 years old and had a hurt arm. But I really wanted to come back to Cincinnati because I knew that my body wasn't right. And if I was going to get healthy, I wanted to try to do it here, because if it was going to be the end, I wanted to be able to retire in the uniform that I played so many years. Right. And so, Brian Price was one of the few guys also in the game that was going to look at me and say, I don't care if he's throwing 82 miles an hour. I want that guy on my staff. And so that's what wound up happening. I kind of had to talk the organization into it a little bit. I came here in the offseason. I threw a bullpen. And Billy Hatcher watched me throw it, and Dick Williams was there and all the guys. And I was throwing in the bullpen. It was probably 82, 83 miles an hour at best, maybe 81. I don't even know. But, Billy Hatcher looked at me and he was like, that looks like his stuff to me, sign him, bro. And so I went to Dick. It was like Dick Williams wasn't calling me and saying, hey, I want to sign you. So I was like, Dick, what is going on, man? Like, I saw him in the training room one day. I'm just hanging out. I was like, are we going to do this thing or what, man? And he's like, well, I'm worried that you're going to get hurt again and we're going to have to pay for the surgery. Oh. And I was like, look, if I get hurt again, I'm going home, man. I'm 40 years old. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I'll play for the league minimum. Just give me the opportunity. Right. I didn't care. If I got over that hump, I go somewhere else and make some more money, but I never did. And he gave me the opportunity. I pitched 14 starts. And then the last 3 months of the season, I traveled with the team and acted like I was still playing. And I ran a radio show. And I gave all the love I could possibly give to the young guys on that staff, like a Tyler Malley and guys like Sal Romano, and Amir Garrett and all those guys. I gave them every nook and cranny I had, man. All the tricks of the trade I got to give you, man, to see if you can help your career out, because I knew it was the end of the game for me.
Yeah, now, unfortunately, most of those guys are gone now. So let's bring it back to what we kind of started at the beginning of this podcast is the Reds now, Reds today. And myself included, a lot of Reds fans are ticked off about the way things are going, and it doesn't seem like they have a sense of direction. Like, the only direction is we're not going to spend any money. But there are some young guys that if they all hit in 2024, we could possibly have a competitive ball club again. What is your thoughts on the path that the Reds are doing and where the future could be?
Well, the thing is, the teams like the Reds are just always behind the eight ball a little bit. You're in this pickle because the teams that have a ton of money, like the Dodgers and the Red Sox, who can spend all they want because their TV deals are $1 trillion, they have the opportunity to have homegrown talent, and then they always have the opportunity to add something to that homegrown talent. Go out and pluck out a Max Scherzer. Right. And the Reds are not really afforded that opportunity most of the time. just the economics of the game are continuing to be harder and harder for the smaller club, because what winds up happening is we don't have a salary cap in baseball, but we have a ceiling where the teams have to pay a luxury tax if they spend more than that, right? And whatever that number is, like 220 million to 250 million, somewhere in there, as that number continues to get pushed up, and obviously active players want that number pushed up because that allows for free agency and for a guy like me to get paid like I should when I'm a free agent, right? So we want that ceiling to be higher. But as that ceiling keeps going up, it makes it harder and harder for kind of the middle class to lower class teams to be able to afford it. So if you're looking at it, if you're like a guy like Phil Castellini and you're looking at your ball club and you're like, I believe we're playing for third or fourth place this year, or we're playing for third or fourth place and I can drop 40 million, economically, you just say it makes sense to drop the money. And so what you're always waiting for is a homegrown staff to come up through the minor leagues like Jay Bruce and those guys did with Joey Votto all at the same time, and Johnny Cueto and Mike Leake. As they came up and Homer Bailey, you realize what you had. Okay, we can go get Matt Latos. We can add a couple pieces of that puzzle. But if you don't have that homegrown talent getting it almost done on their own, they're not going to be willing to go out and spend the money. And so, it's frustrating for fans. It's frustrating for the front office. It's frustrating for everybody because you always feel like you're playing, with a kind of an understaffed team. And, I think in my mind, honestly, just like in football, Tom Brady has the ball in his hands so often. He is so important to his team. I believe that starting pitching is that important to a baseball.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for me personally, if I'm going to choose where I'm going to spend my money, I'm going to spend it on starting pitching. And the one thing I could say critically against these guys is that I would have tried to not let a guy like Sonny Gray leave. If you have starting pitching that is already seasoned and getting the job done and you're paying them top dollar and they're already there, you know what I mean? Like those guys I have to hang on to. I feel like I'll throw a scrappy lineup out there like we have now. Young guys mixed in with Joey and a rookie of the year at second base, right? And see if they can get it done at the plate and defensively. I like that. But you don't take guys from AAA, shove them in the rotation and just go out there and get the job done in Major League Baseball. It doesn't happen. It takes a while to figure out how to get big league hitters out on a consistent basis and to stay healthy. And so for me, I was disappointed that they have let some starting pitching go over a lot of years, starting back with Johnny Cueto, Mike Leake, myself. Letting the starting pitching go to me is where they're dropping the ball a little bit. And I don't know the economics of the game though, so I can't say how their bottom line, is affected by that. But just from the outsider's perspective as a player, that's the only thing I'm disappointed in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that frustrates me the most is we always talk about a small market. I call them Tweety Birds, the Cardinals. They're not much of a bigger market than we are, but they're always a competitive ball club. And like you said, I think they spend their money on pitching. They always got pitchers. I mean, and they can mix and match with other people. That's one thing where I agree. That's where I think the Reds have dropped the ball on this is you got to have pitching. In baseball, you got to have pitching. There's
also a lot of things that I'm not even privy to after being in the organization for a decade, which is, who are our scouts? What kind of draft classes did we have over the last 5 years? If I'm just guessing and you see that the Cardinals are competitive every single year and with a lot of unknown players who come up and do well on a team like that, it seems like somehow they're getting homegrown talent that's more consistently better than some other teams like the Reds, right? And so, is their scouting department, do they scout on totally different ideas than the Red Scouts, right? I don't know where the ball gets dropped, but there's just so many layers to baseball and how we acquire these players and then how they flourish inside of an organization that it's really hard to put your finger on exactly what would turn the whole ship around unless you could see the thing from, all the way from the top, which is the 5 or 6 people who maybe sit around a table and say, yeah, we're going to give $200 million to Joey Votto. Right. Because if you think about that, those people who are saying yes and no to those contracts, it's not Dusty Baker.
Right.
Price. They're not in on these meetings.
Yeah.
I've had these conversations with these guys. They do not know that Joey Votto is going to get $225 million and that the next week Brandon Phillips is going to sign for 72. Right. There's only a handful of people who know that, and that's ownership. Right. And so you can see the ownership's books, and you could actually see why they make money, where they don't make money, and all these things, and then start going down to the scouting department and the drafts and how good are our drafts. You have to see all this stuff to really know how can we make this organization better? And they obviously are there trying to do those things, but it just isn't working out right now.
Yeah, unfortunately. Now, you brought up Dusty Baker and you brought up Brian Price, and you played for Tito. I don't not that I don't want you to pick your favorite, but I mean, I guess, well, how are they different and playing for all these different managers? Because you had Dusty and Tito have won more games than, most managers combined,
Right.
And Brian Price, I think Brian Price was a good manager. I think he got a raw deal here, in my opinion. But what was it like for playing for Dusty and for Tito?
I would say, for one, Brian Price was my favorite pitching coach of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It also was probably because I was also in the prime of my career when I was a little bit more respected. Like I had a guy like Dave Wallace in my Boston years, but I was a little younger then. You know what I mean? There's a weird thing when you're young in the game, and your pitching coach or your manager sometimes can feel like the principal at your high school, right?
Right.
It feels like a wall or a barrier between you and that guy. But as you become more seasoned and you creep in closer to that 40-year-old age and you're well respected in the game, you then sometimes have that manager or that pitching coach become, in a lot of ways, your peer, and you can talk on the same level and you're not always talking up to him anymore. And so, in the early years, it's hard to kind of rate my old pitching coaches versus a guy like Brian Price. But Brian, at the time, was my favorite pitching coach for sure. I actually thought, I thought Brian was an okay manager. I thought he was a much better pitching coach. And the reason is because Brian is a super nice guy. And, when you get put in the manager spot, you get put in a spotlight sometimes that you got to be a little bit more kind of sugar-coatish, or like you almost got to like treat things with a little softer. When you're any other coach, you can just be who you are, right? And I really love Brian, who he was as a pitching coach, flying under that radar. But when you put him in the spotlight, he became like where you're having to talk on TV every day. You're having to be very politically correct. You're having to be kind of like a straight-laced guy, and he wasn't really that. And so, it took someone special like Dusty to be able to do both, which is be the manager and kind of be this openly swaggish, just having a great time, tell you exactly what he thinks and not worrying about what he thinks. Yeah, exactly. Just putting the toothpick in his mouth and having a great time. But Dusty was my favorite manager of all time, hands down, the most eclectic guy I've ever been around. I mean, he could go, you would walk in his office and he would have little sticky notes. I've never seen a guy. I mean, look, I left $40,000 worth of tickets every year on my pass list. The average major player leaves probably $5,000 to $7,000. I left 40 every year. Dusty's the only person who used to leave more tickets than me. And that's because he had friends everywhere. And if you go in his office, he would have little notes. Call such and such back because there's a house in Arizona for sale. I need my one iPod that's sitting on my couch. I need to call somebody to get that. I've got a moose leg here from Alaska that the chef needs to dial it up just right. I've got tomatoes here because Joey Votto's not feeling good that I grew in my garden back home. They just got shipped here. Like, he was doing things you need 4 humans to do everything this guy was doing.
Right.
Everything that was going on in the ball club. I mean, it was absolutely astonishing. The energy level for an older guy, just amazing. And the difference, I would say, probably between him and Tito, I love Tito as well. Tito was a real player's manager as well. I would say the difference between Dusty and every other manager I ever had, including Tito, is that almost everybody else would kind of cower a little bit to, like I say, that politically correctness and that softness, and kind of like shy away from confrontation with the general manager. And Dusty Baker was Dusty Baker through and through. He didn't care who was in the room. He didn't bite his tongue for nobody. He told the same stories in front of me as he told in front of Hank Aaron. You know what I mean? Like, and he wasn't a chameleon. He was just Dusty Baker. And pretty amazing to have played for him for such a long time, and to just to know that Dusty Baker is half credited for inventing the high five. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
Right. That's cool.
Inventing the high five. This guy is he's like in a whole nother league. They should make a movie about Dusty Baker.
Oh, dude, they totally could with his life and the stuff he's been through. And yes, that would be, I go watch it. That would be cool. Another interesting one here. And you give me just about an hour. I mean, you're great here. Real quick, Joey Votto. And he's an iconic player for the Reds. He's going to go into Hall of Fame. What is he has, to me, he's come out of his shell the last couple of years. I mean, first was a rookie. He didn't say a whole lot. Last couple of years, he's been unfreaking believable. He's on TikTok now. He's got Twitter. He's got all this stuff. Right. Is the Joey Votto that we see now, is that the way he's like in the clubhouse?
Yes, he always was. And so I would put Joey kind of in that same category when I talked about Tiger Woods and I talked about Alex Rodriguez and I talked about Randy Johnson, right? They all have different ways. Like, Randy was the guy who was, just a jerk to everybody his whole career, right? He was just like irritated and pissed off all the time, wouldn't sign no baseballs for nobody, didn't fly on the plane with the team half the time. There's these layers to these guys that they felt like they had to be almost like put on a face and a facade in order to perform.
Right.
And Joey has always been the same guy in the locker room. He's always been the smartest guy in the room. He's always been well-read. He's always been funny, joking around, having a great time. But nobody else got to see that because he wasn't comfortable enough to let the guard down.
Right.
And, over the time that I played in that locker room, Joey was a guy who, he would watch me. He would watch me and see how I would talk to the media. And he would see how I communicated and mixed it up with other humans. And he would say to me once in a while something like, hey, Bronson, did you hear what I just said to that guy? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, would you have said that a different way? And, he was trying to find how it is he was going to get comfortable in the world. And when you're getting near the end of your career, it's just natural. You feel like, you own the space you're in. You feel comfortable here. You don't feel like people are being critical of you anymore. And you can let loose a little bit and be yourself. And that's what you're seeing in Joey, is that what we got to see in the locker room all those years, he is now just saying, okay, you guys can come in and watch the show as well.
Right.
And that is a beautiful thing. And, I've said for a long time, I told Joey 2 years ago, I said, hey, man, you let me know when you want to do it. I want him to do stand-up in front of my band at like a Bogarts or something.
Oh, dude.
We'll play a show. I'm like, you put on a tuxedo, dude, and freaking just take a whole year to dial in an hour or half-hour set. And just crush, we'll get a couple of comedians, well-known comedians to help you write, and just go up there and destroy, man, while you're smoking a cigarette on stage. And then I said, we'll play some music afterwards. And he said to me, he goes, Bronson, he said, you know what kind of balls you got to have to do that, man? And I said, you got him, bro. You're seeing this come out of Michelle. Maybe one of these days I'm going to get him up on that stage.
Oh, dude, that would be epic. If that ever happens, you got to let me know, because I want to be there front row. That would be awesome.
Oh, I told him, dude, he would sell the place out in a second.
Oh, hell yeah, he would.
He's been so guarded. He's been so guarded in his career, that, people just want to see. I think people would show up for him to read a kid's book, you know what I mean? Because he's really been so untouchable as a player. I mean, he really is a guy who comes to the ballpark and goes home, and comes to the ballpark and goes home. I mean, in all the years I played with him, I only got him out twice. I got him out for a boat party once, and got him out to a club in Arizona one time. And both times you'd be like, who's the guy on the dance floor freaking spinning all the girls around? Joey Votto's the best dancer in the whole crew, and you never even seen the guy dance before. It was amazing.
So what doesn't he do good then? If he's a good dancer, he's a good baseball player. What doesn't he do good?
What he doesn't do good, or he didn't do good, I'd say, is just, kind of deal with a little bit of anxiety, like social anxiety. You know what I mean? To be able to just let that guard down and say, I don't care if you see the inside of me. Go ahead. Right? That's how I lived. I opened my closet from day one to people because I realized for me, it was less pressure. But some people didn't see it that way. And it took Joey a long, long time to be able to let that guard down a bit, to just say, hey, I'll let you guys see the inside of me. And even to this day, I mean, you're seeing parts of him, but he still probably is much more guarded than I ever was in that locker room.
Yeah, well, the older you get, the more your give a F goes out the door.
Absolutely.
That's just the way it is.
But what you realize, people don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Dale. What?
I was just going to ask Bronson if he had enough time for me to get another question in, or if he needed to go.
I keep taking the time up. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it sounds like you were a phenomenal teammate. Obviously, you did a lot of things, hosted the parties, did things outside of just, going on that field and off the field, and, just hanging out with the guys then. Who was one of your favorite players? Doesn't even have to be Cincinnati. Could be Boston, from earlier in your career or something like that. One of your favorite teammates, and then maybe also funniest.
One of my favorite teammates and funniest, hands down, was Kevin Millar.
Oh God, yeah.
You guys get to see him on TV now, and it's part of what makes him go now. Is he's got this little twinkle in his eye, almost that Will Ferrell twinkle, where it's like you don't know if he's serious or not. And it's almost like they never come out of character, right? They just they're constantly and they do it purposely, to be able to goat everybody and not really get in trouble, because it's like this guy can say anything because he just says everything, right? So, Kevin Millar was one of my favorites for sure. David Ross. Ryan Hannigan, the two guys who caught me here, they were really my speed. The guys that I really loved were the guys that could kind of do what I did, which was they like to go out at night, but they didn't like to get too crazy, right? It was like, we go out at night, but we also take care of ourselves while we're out at night.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not looking for a guy who wanted to get in a fight in the back alley. I wasn't looking for a guy who wanted to drink 20 beers a night.
Right.
So those were a couple of my great but guys like Lenny DiNardo from my Red Sox days, you know, in the Reds locker room, that, you know, it's endless. Really, Paul Bacco was one of the great characters of all time in Major League Baseball. Ryan Dempster,
Dempster. He's
Sean,
hilarious too. He's another guy who could do stand up. Is Dempster?
Yeah, absolutely. These guys, you know, the characters of the game are the guys you really, really miss. The guys who made that locker room go. And you know, there's always a couple on every team, and they're the shenanigans. You know, I mean, when you're in a major league locker room and you got guys, you know, that are like Louis Tiant that have been playing, you know, been around the game for 40, 50, 60 years, man. And you're like showering with these dudes and everybody's playing grab ass and talking shit. And it's like, you know, it doesn't get any better sometimes then you know, sometimes you like take yourself back from yourself and remember you're like a kid and you're like, man, I'm in the locker room and all this crazy is going on right now. But that's what made it fun, being part of the boys club. It was the things that went on that you got to experience that you would never see anywhere else in a regular job because HR would have got called, you know?
Right. Exactly. Now, that's what everybody says too, is when they retire, that's the thing they miss. They miss the game, but they miss hanging out in the clubhouse, hanging out in the locker room. That's a lot of people say that. Absolutely.
Yeah. The boys club was always where it was at. And it's why I go down to the clubhouse now, you know, and it's getting harder and harder because of COVID, and also because as people disappear from the game and people don't know who you are, it's harder to have like a really solid connection, you know, with guys. And probably, you know, 3 years from now, there'll probably be hardly anybody, if anybody, on this team that I played with. And then the only guys down in the locker room that'll still be there are the guys that clean the shoes and put out the laundry, who've been there for 25 years or 30 years, you know. Exactly. And those are the guys you'll chat it up with. But there's no doubt that what you miss is kind of that hang, man. That old high school feeling you get when you leave school and you're like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be with these boys ever again. It's the same thing when you kind of retire from the game.
Yeah, exactly. Now, real quick, one more question. I'll give me over an hour. What the cornrows? I've been dying to ask you about this. The cornrows that you rocked in Boston. Was that? I don't want to say on purpose. Of course, it was on purpose. But was it more of a stylistic thing, or you just were like, screw it, I'm gonna see if I can do this or not?
Well, it started. See, nobody knew me back in my Pirate days because we had bad teams that were losing 90.
And you had short hair too. I never saw you with short hair until I saw the video of Pirates. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so I had short hair all growing up. I'd never grown my hair out. I kind of had curly hair. You know, it was like my father's hair. It was just like a little messy and all over the place, right? It's like hard to control. So I didn't ever have long hair as a kid. Right. But I was with the Pirates, and we had a couple of Dominicans and Puerto Rican guys, and one of the wives was doing cornrows. Okay. And some of the guys' hair. And I was like, I'm going to grow my hair out just enough to be able to do that, I think. Right. So I've done that in the minor leagues. And in AAA, I was really loving it. You know, I was having a great time. It was like you could put on a hat easy, whatever. Right. I was pitching well, and I'd get called to the big leagues. And, man, Lloyd McClendon was my manager, and he was no business. I mean, he just didn't even crack a smile back then. He was all business. And he would call me in his office and basically want to rip my head off because I had my hair in cornrows. And he'd say, you know, he'd be like, what do you got in your hair? And I'd say the same thing Pokey Reese has in his hair. And you know, he'd be like, if you don't get that out of your hair right now, I'm sending you that ball. He'd be like smashing the desk and stuff, man. Like, I'm like, God, no. So I'd take it out, you know, and then I'd go back down to AAA and I'd put them back in. And I felt so free and easy in AAA. And you come call to the big leagues, and I'm like walking on eggshells all the time.
Yeah, crap, I got to take all this shit out again.
Yeah. So it started back in the Pirate days. So I get over to the Red Sox, and in 2003, we were in the playoffs, and before the playoffs, it's probably like August. And Kevin Millar, we come back from a road trip, and I don't know if we had a bad road trip or maybe he had a bad road trip. He said, Bronson, shave my head. So I take the clippers and I shave Millar's head. Right. Well, for the next month and a half, he comes to the park and he just keeps screaming at everybody, "You got to skin it to win it. You got to skin it to win it." So he's freaking forcing basically everybody on the team to shave their head, and everyone shaved their head that year by the end of the season, except for David Ortiz, because he had pretty short hair already. Yeah. Johnny Damon and Nomar Garciaparra. Everybody else shaved their head. And Nomar was getting married in the offseason. He said, if we win the World Series, I'll shave my head and send you guys a Christmas card. Nobody knew that Johnny was growing his hair down to his shoulders. Right. So those are the only two guys that didn't shave their head. So I've got these videos that John Burkett, the old pitcher, made in 2003. And there's 150 media members. It's Yankee Stadium, ALCS, and you look over at the Yankees, and it looks like a bunch of CEOs all clean cut. And you literally look over at our team, and it's a bunch of white heads with guys like Pat Nixon with Fu Manchus. We look like the Hell's Angels, man, came straight out of prison. Like, it was unbelievable, the contrast. And so, at the end of that 2003 season, when Aaron Boone hits that homer in Game 7 and we lose, I went home that off season, and because we shaved our heads, I said, I'm going to let my hair grow for a while. I want to see if I can get over the hump.
Right.
So I grew my hair out basically that whole season, and it started getting curlier and curlier, and I left it. And then in 04, Johnny comes in spring training. He comes in with the long hair looking like Jesus.
Yeah.
Manny's got like the dreads going.
Yeah.
Peyton's got the Jerry curl going.
Mm-hmm.
And this locker room is just getting crazier all the time. Millar is like the puppet master, and he's just winding this thing up. And so I thought, I'm going to go back to cornrows again.
Right.
So it was like mid-season. We were in San Francisco playing Oakland. I had my hair put in cornrows. I'm in the lobby of the hotel, and the first guy I run into, of course, is Schilling, straight lace Schilling. So Schilling sees me, and he's just like, "What is that?" You know what I mean? And I'm just like, "Oh man, I don't want to hear it." So, but then I go like 15 straight starts without losing.
Oh, there you go.
And after
you ain't taking them out after that.
After that, it was totally fine. I mean, when I started in the playoffs that year, they would have hairstylists around Fenway Park giving guys cornrows, and it was just me being kind of a free spirit as I always was, and really enjoying kind of the craziness of that locker room and making a push towards the World Series with those cornrows. It was a time in my life that was amazing, and people ask me all the time, do you regret putting cornrows in? I'm like, no, it was fantastic. It was like, it was something that made me a little unique. I was probably like the 15th most popular player on that team because I was just an unbelievable all-star team of guys.
Right.
And, it made me stand out a little bit, and I enjoyed the superstition of it and all that.
Well, you won a World Series with the cornrows, and you guys had one of the greatest comebacks ever. Because, I mean, I hate the Yankees. So I was rooting for you guys. And Kevin Millar, I think, called you guys a bunch of idiots. I think that's what you guys were called.
Yeah.
But you had because you were didn't you pitch in the game where Dave Roberts stole second and then everything started to change? Didn't you pitch in that game?
That was game 4. I don't think I pitched in game 4. I'm guessing no, because I got beat up the night before in game 3. I think I pitched game 5 out of the pen.
Okay. And
then I pitched game 7. Game 7 got clinched when I was warming up in the bullpen. So I pitched in game 5 and then in 6. That's when A-Rod knocked the ball out of my hand in 6.
Yes. Okay, I remember that now, yeah.
That's in 6. And then I pitched in game 1 and game 4 in the World Series out of the bullpen as well.
Yeah, now that iconic play is unbelievable, or he thought he could do that. I just remember looking at your faces going, what the hell? You can't do that. And we didn't have replay back then. Look, the umpires got together and
that was before replay, and that was also in a time when everybody thought that the curse of the Bambino would make everything go south against the Red Sox all the time. So, I was just thinking, don't tell me that they're gonna not overturn this, because man, if that starts, we're in trouble. Because then I had Jeter, I had Sheffield on second base, and it was 4-3, and Jeter scored already, and only 1 out. So I probably wouldn't have got out of that inning without giving up another run. It would have been a tie ball game. It would have been a totally different series.
No, I have to tell you, I think you got Sheffield to pop up after that, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, Bronson, you give me over an hour. I appreciate it, man. I could keep talking to you forever. But again, I appreciate you coming on. I know you got family in town, so you take it easy. And like I said, anytime you want to call on the show, hit me back up, and I'll be glad to have you back on.
All right, man. I appreciate it. When I start making a push for this record, maybe I'll touch base with you again.
It sounds good, brother.
Good to meet you, Bronson.
See ya. That was freaking cool.
Yeah.
Did you have fun? I know I did most of the talking. I'm sorry.
I know, man. That's you. I said I knew you would.
Well, I thought there'd be more comments. I thought people would be blowing it up and stuff.
Yeah, I did too. I was surprised. It was like, but I mean, he's such a great storyteller.
I know.
A lot of it was just letting him go, and just listen to him.
Yeah, I can sit here and listen to him all night. That was.
There's not a lot for me to jump in to say. Just let this man go and listen to his stories.
Right. That's kind of what I was trying to do. I was trying not to talk over him too much, but he would say stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, what about this? And
I know. You want to, throw something in, but it's you don't want to interrupt the man.
Exactly.
It was awesome. Yeah, you can tell. You can tell that he's a people person.
Absolutely.
Just 100%. Just loves people. Loves to tell stories.
He's exactly what you thought he was. I mean, he's the interviews that he's given. Yeah, that's him. He's not any different. I think he'd be like that if we met in person someday.
Oh, for sure. You can just tell he's the same guy no matter where he's at and what he's doing. He doesn't change. He doesn't turn up or down for anybody. He's just Bronson Arroyo.
Exactly. All right, Dale, I'll let you plug your Bengals and Brews and all that stuff before we get on out of here.
Yeah, we'll have a show tomorrow with Tyler Mendering. I think that's how you say his last name.
The TikTok dude.
Houday Jeff. Yeah, the TikTok Tyler. So, yeah, that'll show maybe at 6, maybe at 7. I don't know. Travis is talking about changing times, but I really don't know. I've been on here, so I'll let you guys know as soon as I find out. You can follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube. We appreciate any support. And Iceman, he's on our show a lot, and he's my boy. And thank you for having me on here with Bronson. It was a good time, man. Who day?
Absolutely, dude. Anytime. Who day? All right, guys, let's get to the Facebook groups that let me live stream. And as always, I appreciate every single one of them. They are Who Day Nation, Who Day Legion, Cincinnati Reds riding third, heading for home, Bearcat Ruckus, Bearcat Country, the Ohio State Bucknuts, the Ice Bar. And then you follow me on all my social media platforms, all under Sports with Strawberry Ice. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Twitter handle is at Jeff A. Trunipole. TikTok is at Iceman90. I will be pulling off the sound later on and putting this on the podcast. So if you guys missed any of it and you want to listen to just the podcast, go check it out. It'll be on BeanPod, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher Play, pretty much wherever you get your podcast. Please make sure you rate, like, and review. Give me a 5-star review. Leave a comment so more Cincinnati fans can find my podcast. YouTubers, like I said, you guys are awesome. We're 1,706 subscribers. And again, if it wasn't, and I keep saying it, and this is not tongue-in-cheek, if it wasn't for you guys subscribing to my channel and watching this stuff, none of this would be happening for me. So I appreciate every single one of you guys who watch the show, subscribe to it, tweet it out, everything. That is awesome. Like I said, if it wasn't for you guys, none of this would happen. So make sure, tell everybody who hasn't seen the show, tweet it out. Tell everybody Bronson Arroyo, he was an unbelievable guest. He's awesome. Check him out and go see him if you're on the west side. His band, let me bring that up here again real quick, is going to be at the Pirates Den. And that's over here on the west side, August 6th at 8 p.m. So make sure you guys go check that out. I'm going to make sure, hopefully if I'm here, I think I'm here, I'm going to try to make sure that I can go watch him and his band. Anyway, you guys have a great weekend. We got Memorial Day weekend. Go have a beer, celebrate Memorial Day, have some fun. And like I said, I'm going out of town, so I'm not sure what my schedule is going to be like next week. I'm hoping some of these Bengals who have told me they come on my show will come on, but we'll see. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel because you never know when I'm going to go live or post something. It's usually every day at 5:30, but like I said, Monday probably not, Tuesday probably not live. I might post something. We'll see. Anyway, other than that, say it with me, people. That's just sports, baby. See ya!